Hi guys, good afternoon. Today we're going to be working on lesson 48. Now, touch the column A in part 1. Both those sound combinations make this sound. Everybody, what sound? You're going to say the sound for the underlined part and then read the word. Touch the first word in column B. What sound? What word? La. Next word. What sound? What word? Because. Next word. What sound? What word? Crawl. Look at column C. First word. What word? Caution. Next word. What word? Draw. Next word. What word? Fault. Now let's continue with part 2. What's the underlined part? X. What word? Exposing. Next word. What's the underlined part? What word? Thundered. Next word. What's the underlined part? J. What word? Emerging. Next word. What's the underlined part? E. What word? Feared. Next word. What's the underlined part? Un. What word? Unlike. Next word. What's the underlined part? Lee. What word? Absolutely. Next word. What's the underlined part? Ch. What word? Crunching. Next word. What's the underlined part? What word? Survived. Next word. What's the underlined part? E. What word? Screamed. Next word. What's the underlined part? S. What word? Silenced. Next word. What's the underlined part? What word? Several. Next word. What's the underlined part? S. What word? Excite. Next word. What's the underlined part? S. What word? Accept. Let's look at part 3, boys and girls. We're going to talk about what those words mean. Word number 1. What a word? Leisurely. Something done leisurely is done at a slow and easy pace. Turn to word number 2. What word? Aroused. When something is aroused, it is awakened or stirred up. Word number 3. What word? Feast. When you feast, you eat a lot. Word number 4. What word? Scavengers. Scavengers are animals that eat what other animals leave behind. Word number 5. What word? Ignore. If you ignore something, you do not pay attention to it. Word number 6. What word? Slither. Slither means to slide along. Now let's go over part number 4. First word. That word is tyrannosaur. What word? Tyrannosaur. Next word. What word? Heavy. Next word. What word? Occasional. Next word. What word? Building. Next word. What word? Predator. Next word. What word? Frozen. Next word. What word? Lizard. Next word. What word? Heavy. Finished. Next word. What word? Instincts. Next word. What word? Distance. Next word. What word? Constantly. Next word. What word? Instinctively. Next word. What word? Instantly. Next word. What word? Stripped. Now let's go ahead and continue with our story. The title of the story is Ornithomimid Meets Tyrannosaur. The ornithomimid dug in the sand, exposing 3 eggs. One of Tekla's brothers was emerging from his shell. Snap went the jaws on the ornithomimid, and Tekla's brother never saw the sun or ate the rich grasses on the plain. The ornithomimid ate 3 eggs. Suddenly, the ornithomimid stopped and stood up. It looked almost frozen as it sniffed the air. Then it began to run. It ran faster than a horse, but not fast enough. Another animal thundered behind it. The most feared animal on the plain. It was a tyrannosaur. Like an ornithomimid, it stood on 2 heavy legs with a long lizard tail behind it. Unlike an ornithomimid, a tyrannosaur was taller than a 2-story building. A tyrannosaur was a predator able to kill nearly any other animal on the plain. It was 40 feet from the tip of its nose to the end of its tail. Its head was very big. A tyrannosaur looked strange with its tiny front legs that were much smaller than its head. Although the ornithomimid was swift, the tyrannosaur overtook it after the 2 animals had run less than 50 feet. The jaws of the tyrannosaur closed on the upper back of the ornithomimid with a crunching sound that could be heard far across the plain. The ornithomimid thrashed and screamed for a moment, but another bite from the tyrannosaur's jaws silenced it. The tyrannosaur leisurely picked at the dead ornithomimid as several of Tekla's sisters and brothers freed themselves from their eggs. None survived, however. The smell of blood and food had aroused many predators, some large and some small. Some would wait for the scraps left by the larger animals. Others were bigger and bolder. They were ready to steal the kill from other animals, but not from a tyrannosaur. By the next morning, little remained of Tekla's brothers and sisters except a few pieces of eggshell, and very little remained of the ornithomimid. After the tyrannosaur had finished feasting on the better parts of the ornithomimid, it went off to sleep. Scavengers closed in. For 3 hours they had stripped the ornithomimid to the bone. Other scavengers moved in. During the night they feasted on the bones, and the next morning, when the sun rose over the night fog that settled on the plain, all that marked the place where the ornithomimid had fallen were a few large bones and footprints, thousands of them. That morning found Tekla from the cliffs. Her instincts had told her to run with the other grazing animals on the plain, so she did. She found herself near a group of about 20 triceratops. They moved slower than most of the other grazing animals, and they ate constantly. They were quite calm, much like a herd of cows on a hot day. From time to time they lay down. During the hottest part of the day, they slept. Tekla slept with them. They seemed to half ignore and half accept her. After resting with them for about an hour, she began to trot around. Some of them lifted their heads and looked at her for a moment, but then they turned to their afternoon sleep. Tekla felt playful, but there wasn't much to play with. She sniffed a snake that was about 20 feet long. The snake slowly began to slither away. Tekla stepped on the snake's tail. Instantly, the snake turned and struck her. Instinctively, Tekla ducked her head. The snake struck the large plate on Tekla's head. Before the snake could strike again, Tekla turned and ran back to the sleeping triceratops. She nipped on grass and strolled around the snoozing animals. She felt content. There were occasional sounds of animals fighting in the distance, but the grazing animals were calm, and so was Tekla. Whenever you're done, please complete lesson 48 and turn in your workbook.